All right. As I mentioned, we have special guest Dave Sullivan on the show today. So, Dave, thanks for joining us.
Hey, great to see you guys.
Now, I reached out to you because you have my favorite podcast other than ours, and I've listened to so many episodes, and I really like the format. I like the conversational feel of it. And you got into this after having a lot of experience in the roofing industry, and then you launched the Roofer Show, and then you have consulting you offer as well. We're going to get into all that at the end, but just give our listeners and our guests kind of a short background on your experience as the owner of a roofing company.
All right. Yeah, sure. I grew up in a small family roofing business. I'm out here on the West Coast outside of San Francisco. And I was always planning on coming into the business. I went to school out here at University of California. And when I got out of school, the plan was I was going to come into the business. My father was going to teach me the ropes and figure out what's going on. And when I got out of school, he ended up having a heart attack. So I had to jump in there. And even though I'd gone to business school, I didn't know a thing about running this business when I got into it, because it's not like, coming up with a plan to build widgets and so forth like in school. So this is the real deal where you've got chaos and all these moving parts. So it was difficult. So I learned the hard way, I'll tell you.
Oh man, I bet. I didn't know you had a business degree.
Yeah. So that was a while back in 79. So it's been a while.
Yeah. So you got a business degree. You got kind of baptism by fire by working in your father's company. And then, so kind of what was the level of the company, about the number of employees? What kind of roofing were you guys doing? I know you're out in the West Coast. So what kind of roofing were you guys doing? And then we'll get into like what it turned into.
Yeah. We had it was a small company. We had a couple of crews, and we did everything, anything and everything. So we'd do residential, we'd do commercial, whatever came about. And so I just kind of followed the pattern. It's an old business since 1924. So I followed the pattern of what we were doing before. And it was tough. I came in there thinking I knew it all, and these guys would have no part of that. So it's, really struggled when I first got in there, because it's a different program, as I say.
And so for you guys, for your business, I know we talked offline about, here in Dallas, such a big part of our revenue is storm restoration. Hailstorm comes in and everybody's busy knocking on doors, looking at, doing free inspections on roofs and stuff like that. And you mentioned that you guys really don't deal with that out there. So how did you get business? What was your prospecting tactic that you used?
Yeah, the storm restoration is kind of a new thing, and I had no idea how big that industry was until a lot of my coaching clients are actually in the storm business. So out here, we've got fires and earthquakes, no storms. We get a lot of rain, and heavy rain on certain periods of time. But and so really what happened, a little more background on my business, was when I was struggling through this time, I was smart enough to hire a consultant, somebody that could help me. And I learned so much having him come in, and we really got this, put together a business plan, kind of really dialed this down. And we ended up focusing on the commercial end of the business, and we dropped our residential division, and that changed everything. It just took off. And so we focused on that. Then we got into the maintenance and repair business. That really took off. And so that's really where the business was coming from. It was all re-roofing existing properties, warehousing, industrial, a lot of high-rise work over in the city. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, we developed just a great clientele, and we focused down on building owners, investors. So we didn't have property flippers. We didn't have general contractors. We wanted somebody that was interested in buying quality and believed in roof maintenance. And by focusing down on that, they have a lot of like-minded people that they know that are also in the industry. So our referral base was really strong. And something we did back then, I've been out of the business for a while, but what really worked for us, believe it or not, was canvassing commercial areas. We had a telemarketer that would actually dig down and find out who the property owner was. And we could do that through tax records. And we could see, and sort by age of building, just like you would now, age of building, size, preferably multiple building owners. But by having this person do the research, we could get in touch with them, and people actually answered the phone where, it's not very effective these days, but that's really where it came from. And once you're on a roof, you take a look around at the neighborhood, jot down addresses, turn them over to her, and she would get down and dig them up.
So it sounds like you guys were using really a similar method to a commercial broker. I mean, I know a guy that sells multifamily properties here in Dallas, and he makes about 200 calls a week, cold calling owners of apartment buildings. And he does the exact same thing. And he's just calling all day long. And he'll say, hey, I drove by the building. I noticed you had maybe some deferred maintenance or this or that. I'd love to talk to you if you ever thought about selling, or what it might look like to sell, and what you could get for it and all that stuff. And it must be working, because he just closed on a property a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So when you did that, well, first of all, I'm interested to know what stands out to you about that, Miller. So, you're also the owner of the roofing company here in Dallas. I've got a few ideas about that, but what stands out to you about what he just described?
Well, it was kind of the good old days when what you tried worked, Have you read the book, or it's a very small book called Who Moved My Cheese?
Sure.
Well,
I recommend that highly in these uncertain, crazy times.
Yes, especially it's like come back into my mind just recently. And it sounds like one of the things you said was that when this used to work, and so you had to find newer things. That's where I found myself so much of the time too, is that trying certain methods to get business. If it's door knocking or telemarketing or sending letters, whatever it is, it has an expiration date. It works for so long, and then it quits working, and you have to think of something else. I've even found sometimes it's the words that you use don't work anymore, and so you have to say the same thing but say it differently. And so yeah, it's just kind of the evolution. But yeah, it was great when it worked like that back then, because it was so personal. It was so you're going out and meeting the people, and that's how it was with me early on too. I would know the husband's name, the wife's name, and sometimes the dog's name, and I would remember it for years. They'd call back, hey, how's your wife? How's Kay doing? And there's such a personal touch to it all. And fortunately, it continues to change, but that's where we are now.
That it does, and what's interesting growing up in this business, where you hear so many people talk about the good old days and how it was a certain way. Well, those days weren't necessarily so good. We had the same problems back then. We talk about, the labor issues that we had just a month ago. We don't have any good people in this industry. Well, it was the same gripes that my father's always had, the same thing that I went through building my business. So, it's like the saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And it's the same old deal. It's changing, but a lot of things are the same. It's a tough business. I mean, there's great opportunity. I love this industry, but it's never been easy.
Yep, that's right.
And so as you guys started to kind of adjust, it sounds like you got a lot of help from this consultant. You created a business plan. You got into a situation where you started pursuing more commercial business, especially maintenance business. How did you do that? What is it? I know you can't explain it in incredible detail in this podcast episode, but I mean, what are the pieces that you have to put together to start building that maintenance business? Because we've been talking about that, like how to start that here in Dallas.
Yeah. Well, it really starts off with putting together a business plan, and part of that is focusing down on, first off, what is it that you do? And like I said, when we started out, we tried to be everything to everybody, and that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And if you focus down, and I talk about this with my clients, is, we start off and they're doing windows and basements and roofing and all types of things, and you've got to focus down and say, okay, where do you make your money? Just like we did, where I didn't really realize that we were actually losing money on a residential business because the overhead was so high. Was one problem that we had. We had a lot of callbacks, all of, broken rose bushes, this type of thing. And when you factor that in, it's just not about the gross profit of the job, but you have to look at, break out your overhead of what goes where. And once we did that, we could really see where we made our money. And that was, for us, was commercial re-roofing and maintenance. It's different for I have the question that I get so often is, how do I get into the commercial business? I'm doing great in residential, and it's a different business. So I like to stay out. Why don't you just focus on your residential business, become the best residential guy in town? This is what you specialize in. You're focused down, and grow through that and grow profitably. And what I hear too often is everybody's just chasing this top line revenues, sales. I want to grow. And that's the type of thing that, you get together with your buddies in the business, and everybody, puffs their chest out and talks about how big they are. I'm 20 million, 30 million, look at me. Well, I've known a lot of those guys that just don't make any money. So why, instead of doing $20 million, I'd rather do $5 million, have less risk, have less trucks going down the road, less money churn, cash flow issues, people issues. And you can focus down and make a lot of money. And as they say, the riches are in the niches.
Yeah. I mean, who cares what your gross revenue is? It's what's your net profit.
That's right. And why make it so difficult? Because it's, and everybody's focused. That's all you hear about, is growth of your business. Well, nobody talks about the bottom line. And again, focusing down on what you do well, because, hey, I know guys that do $1 million and make a great living, have a great business, and they're not killing themselves 80 hours a week. They're able to spend time with their family. They're able to go on vacation. And this is, to me, that's what I wanted. And that's what I focused on. And you have to determine that. You have to decide what's right for you. And everything's different. What is it that you want to do? And unless you take a step back and really think about that, you're just out there, putting out fires, working your butt off, and, never seeing your family. And this is a big problem that we have in this industry, is that just the hours are brutal.
It's so interesting that you said it, because you did grow it. I mean, I'm sure you gained a lot of experience and wisdom throughout the business as a business owner and becoming a seasoned leader of a company. But I'm sure that as you grew it to that level, because you mentioned as well that you, before we started this, that you guys got up to 10 million a year in revenue. You had a large maintenance service side going. So I'm sure that there were some challenges along the way. So let's talk about that. What was one of the biggest challenges you guys faced? And if you can share a specific story even about as you started growing that service side and kind of changing the model and kind of getting to cruising altitude with that business model.
Well, what I found was the key to the business, and something that think I was pretty good with was building a team, and building the right people is first identifying what positions you need and hiring people for those positions rather than the other way, which most contractors, end up hiring somebody without really knowing what they need, and will create the job around you. And I don't think that's a good idea. So in my business, I took a look at this. My goal was really to be able to step back and take time off because I wanted to travel. I saw what happened to my father. He was chained to the business. He could never get away. And using a rake structure of management, everything was brought back through him. So he would be so involved with all the decisions. And I saw how that worked out for him. And I wanted to do it differently. And I wanted to travel when I was young, because we get so many contractors that think, oh, I'm going to do all these things, when I retire, travel, play golf, whatever. And the way I look at it is, when you're young, you got the time, but you don't have the money. Then you're running a business. Now we've got the money, but we don't have the time. Well, then you get past that. You got the time and the money, but you may not have the health. So I wanted to do these things as I was growing my business, building a business. And what I was looking for was I've got 3 boys. I wanted to spend time with them. I wanted to be able to travel. We took a lot of vacations together. I did a lot of trekking in the mountains. So I wanted to have time off to do those things. Skied a lot. So that was my goal. And so by building a team and building the processes where I didn't have to be there every day, I was able to step back. And my style of management was really being what I call the orchestra leader at that point. You've got all the instruments and you're just, keeping things going, keeping an eye on people, holding them accountable. But then I could get the hell out of the way and let them do their jobs. And that's really, I think, the key to what was the key to my success was having good people, training them, and retaining them, and making sure they were accountable for the goals that they had set up, and spending the time working with them doing that and building their careers in the business, and then get the hell out of the way.
And there's so much we could say about all that. I mean, I love what you say about building it up, hiring the right people. Is that something that I know you said that's something that you were good at. Is that something that you're just naturally wired to do? Or was there a particular resource that stood out? Was there a book, a workshop, or was it more of the coach? I mean, what really helped you to build that kind of a team? Because I think a lot of guys might say, well, yeah, I'd love to do that, but I've got last 3 guys I hired are knuckleheads, and I'm not, this whole hiring and firing thing's not working out too well.
Well, first off, you've got to hire right. And I think what I find is so many contractors that have been successful hiring salespeople, for instance, have hired outside of the industry, people that are service oriented. I hear, bartenders, people, restaurant workers that have never been into the industry, but are good working with people. And then rather than hiring somebody that knows, it's God's gift to roofing, and then trying to change those bad habits, I don't think that's a good idea. So it starts off with hiring the right people, what you're looking for. And then it's bringing people in and showing them that they have, this is a career. We're not going to chew them up and spit them out, and we're going to train them. We're not going to send them out with Joe Bob and, for a week, and okay, then we're going to let this guy loose. And that's generally what happens. And that's why too many contractors have a revolving door.
That's so interesting. And it's kind of similar to some stuff that Miller has shared too about growing RainTight and kind of taking the reins and then growing it here in Dallas. And he scaled it up pretty large and then scaled it back down, going back to what you mentioned about what's the lifestyle that I want, and who cares how many guys I've got out there if it means that now next thing you know, I'm getting calls early in the morning, late at night. I can't do it. What would you say to that, Miller?
Yeah, I think that's really a great skill to have, and it takes a certain amount of ability to just let go of control, I guess, is what it mainly is, and to trust in the people that you put in place under you. And good for you, man. That's really a great skill to have. I've found that to be a hard thing to do, to completely to train someone and to let them go and do what I've instructed them to do. And yeah, that's a good trick that you've done, a good skill that you've learned, I should say. But I think what Dylan was asking was that a natural thing to you, or did you develop that more?
Well, I think that I've always been curious. I'm interested in people, always enjoyed people. So I've just found that you treat people right. I'm truly interested in developing their skills, and really it's about leadership. And I've always found, treat people well. And too often we get, and that's what I see is if we're so stressed out because we're trying to grow this business, we've got so many guys and we're trying, we've got all these balls in the air. Well, you don't have time to go out to the jobs, for instance. Something that I like to do, I would go out to the jobs, take some sodas, take some sandwiches, whatever. It's no big deal. And just say, hey, thanks, guys. Man, I really appreciate what you're doing, because here you are busting your butts. I know you guys are working as hard as you can. And show appreciation and respect. And what I would try to do is really kind of take some of the younger guys aside and just, hey, what's going on in your life? Everything okay? And tell me about your kids or whatever. And you can just do, takes you 15, 20 minutes, just spend some time, but think about that every time you have the opportunity. And, really care, because that's what people want. They want to be appreciated. They want to be shown respect, and they want to feel that they're working for a winning company, a winning team, and that they have some direction, somebody that's really has a plan, has some, be able to show them that, hey, here's your future. This is what you can do. And these are the steps to get there. And it's just really taking the time. And that's, there's no real skill. I didn't, but it's actually, truly wanting to help people grow and being concerned what's going on in their life, because they've got, everybody's got all these struggles, and helping them achieve their goals. And, they have the same interests that we do. And if they're not being treated right, just as, if you were working for somebody, if you started off working for somebody else, how did that make you feel? And I just really look at it that way. And
that's so good.
Sincerely.
It's so good. I mean, it sounds like you have like a mentor's heart, and it's something that it's a core value at the church I attend in Dallas. They're really big on mentoring, and they team up, or they call it a triad. They'll team up an older guy, and then a middle of the road guy like me, I'm 40, and then a younger guy in their 20s. And the three of us will hang out every 2 weeks or so and do barbecues and do stuff like that, or go on a hunting trip together. And it's the same thing. And it's one of our values at RainTight too, that I learned about when Miller brought me on board. It's on his heart too, is just to kind of, you mentor somebody and truly care about their success and set them up for success. And, Yeah, well, man, when I know for me personally, when I get that from Miller, or I get that from another person in leadership, when they truly care about me and want to see me succeed, well, all of a sudden I want to do whatever I can for them too.
Sure.
It's just you're sowing care and love and wisdom, and you get to reap faithfulness. And it's such a rare thing these days. And when I went to Bible college in Houston, I had a professor there that approached me, and because I was reading on the bench. I had a class in the morning, I had a class at night, so I just sat there and studied during the day. And he said, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you. I noticed you've been sitting here reading." Long story short, he became my mentor in Bible college, and we went on trips together. He invited me over to his house to have dinner. I got to meet his family, his little kids. He kind of got me into preaching and teaching and all that stuff. And that experience, what you just described, what you did in your business, I think is so rare, because guys think, "Oh, I don't have time to do that." But it's almost like I think you don't have time not to do it. And that's
Well, that's the
probably why you've
thing.
got that revolving door.
Yeah, and if you ever want to build a true company that doesn't rely on you, you have to build people. And how often do you hear about, here I am, I'm busting my ass doing these things, and nobody notices. So why should I, work my tail off if it doesn't matter? I could do a great job or I can do a mediocre job. So why not just do the mediocre job? Because there's nothing in it for me. And this is they're interested, what's in this for me? And as everybody is, your customers, they don't care about you. It's like, what's in it for me? And showing them that here's what's in it for you. You have great opportunity, and I'm going to help you. I'm going to mentor you. And I always enjoy it. If I hadn't been a contractor, I think I would have been a teacher. And I did I always enjoyed teaching at the apprenticeship school, for instance, and these kind of things. And this is really, when I left the industry, I sold my business, and I wanted to get back into the podcasting because I wanted to reconnect with the industry. And, I'm just here. I love it. I meet such great people like the two of you, and through the podcast. And if I can offer information and help from my experience, that's great.
That's awesome. So what's the best piece of advice you have for somebody who's listening to this that's a leader in a roofing company? What's your big takeaway from all that you would suggest to them right now?
Well, I have something I call the 2-week vacation. And let's say you just won a 2-week vacation to Hawaii, but the catch is you have to leave in 2 days. Well, most contractors, they could, I can't do that. My business will fall apart. Well, then you've got a problem. This is not the way that you run a business. So again, it comes really taking a look at how, taking a step back, I think is really the key. Putting together a plan, a business plan, and then really taking a look at, okay, how am I going to do this? Do I want it is the most important thing to pump up my ego and have, a $20 million business? Okay, if that's it, then great. Or do you just, I don't want to do that. I don't want to kill myself. I just want to be able to, have a nice business, have some good growth, enjoy what I'm doing, whatever that is. And so the 2-week vacation means that you want to have a business where you can do that. You can take advantage of that. And that is the idea of building this team. And also what you're doing is you're creating value in your business. And this is something we talk about all the time. I mean, at some point, you're going to leave this business. And hopefully it's not in a pine box, but hopefully it's under your terms. But what happens, the vast majority of the time, is that they haven't created value because the business relies on 1 or 2 key people. So without that business, there's no value. Nobody wants to buy it. And um, so you end up just closing the doors. And by putting in these processes and systems and being able to step back, get out of the way, not only are you able to provide a good lifestyle for you and your family, but you're creating value, something that's a saleable asset when you get to that point. And whatever that is, whatever that looks like, maybe you're going to pass this on to onto your kids. Well, that takes years to prepare for that, and having a clear vision of how you're going to do that, what you're going to do. And this gets back to the 2-week vacation, building in these processes and systems so this business is not reliant just on you, because there's no value created in that.
There's so many good leadership principles. I mean, you talked about casting the vision of what's the lifestyle I want and how to achieve that. You talked about skills of having the organizational pieces in place so that you can leave and people are held accountable. People know the routine, people know the tools to use, the strategies. But then going back to you as the leader, that's what stands out to me the most, that you as the leader, you were the kind of leader that truly cared about those around you and equipping those around you and building that dream team, going back to so many of the principles John Maxwell talks about, equipping the leaders around you. It's just so good. And so you took over this company, you had a really bumpy start to having to take on a lot more responsibility. You modified the business model, got into commercial, built out a maintenance program. And I know I listened to one podcast episode where you mentioned it was like 20% of your business, but 50% of your profitability. So it's a total success story. And then you had a good exit at the tail end. I mean, this is what people want. I think we could do a whole nother podcast episode on how to set your business up to have a good exit. A lot of roofers don't even know how to value their business or build it up so they can have a good exit. But now that you've done all that, and then like you said, you jump back in, you've got the heart of a mentor and a coach. Tell us about your podcast and tell us about your coaching program.
Well, I started I'd been retired for 5-6 years, and I just missed the industry. I wanted to reconnect, and I wanted to have something to do. And this is when podcasts really started. This is going back a few years. I think I've got 165 episodes. That's every week where you're just you got to produce. And I loved it. So it's called The Roofer Show. I came up with, let's again keep things simple. Okay. Well, hey, it's for roofers, roofing contractors. It's The Roofer Show. It's simple. And what I wanted to do was not only be able to share, my experience of 30 years as a contractor, but I'm always interested in learning. And this is something that I recommend everybody is always be learning. And I would bring guests on. It's mostly an interview show. And these are and I try to keep it broad where there's, now there's just hundreds of podcasts, and it really dozens in our industry, and they're great. But a lot of them focus on the marketing, solely on the marketing end. And what I wanted to do, and the way my coaching program works, is that, really business is like a 3-legged stool. It's not that complicated in the concepts, but the 3-legged stool, the legs are, you have to sell work, you have to do work, and you have to keep score. And all 3 of those legs have to be strong. And what tends to happen is one of the legs gets weak. We've either got all the sales, we can't get the guys. We've got the guys, we don't have the sales. Or what happens too often, we get the sales, we get the guys. But we can't get the invoices out. We can't, we don't have any job costing because we can't produce things fast enough. So the bookkeeping, accounting leg tends to fall over. And the next thing you know, you've got cash flow problems, and this is it's a problem. So I think the key is to keep those in balance. And so I bring on Accounting is one of the legs that tends to be weak with so many contractors because they don't like the numbers. I'm going to push that off onto somebody that's generally unqualified or just downright an embezzler. And that happens so much in our business because we do push this off. And so I try to bring on, and I have a number of, finance people that I bring onto the show and interview them because I want to learn too. So it's interesting. And I'm asking the questions, really as you are. I want to learn things. I want to learn about people. I want to learn, how to improve. But I bring attorneys on, accounting people, sales and marketing, because everybody wants, nothing happens until you sell something. So I've got a lot of marketing advice. People coming on to share their wisdom. So I've been doing that for really a couple of years. And recently I've been, I'm getting a lot of requests for mentoring and really coaching. And so I set up a coaching program. And what I do is I like to start with something that I call the one-page business plan. And this is a free download that you can get at on my website at therivershow.com. And really, it's a simple outline. It's 8 steps. A lot of the things that we've talked about here, taking a step back and just really filling out. It's a one page. It'll take you about 3 or, just a few hours, but it'll get you thinking about things. And the key is it's the process of planning. It's not so much the plan itself, as General Eisenhower would say, but it's the process of planning. And when you're going through these and really thinking about this and putting together all the parts for the first, you'll see how all this fits together. And from there, if I have a program where we just go deep on those things, and then we get into implementation, just trying to keep this balance and keep, try to achieve your goals. And it's been great. I really enjoy it. It helps a lot of contractors because I don't need all that. We're going okay now as we are, well, where are you going? I'm just out there going around in circles, but we're not getting anywhere, but we're busy. Let's know right way to run a business. So I help contractors build their business, become more profitable. And we take a look at all of these things because I really believe that, you don't have to do this alone. And what tends to happen is as contractors, so many of us come up through the trades or they come out through sales, but they don't have all the experience of running a business. And I know this from firsthand knowledge. And I had the foresight to bring in somebody to help me. And we called them consultants back then. Now we're coaches. But it's the same idea is, I'm going to go climb this mountain. Why wouldn't you get an experienced guide that can show you the most direct way to get there, and you can avoid so many of the pitfalls along the way that just make it a real struggle? It doesn't have to be that difficult because there's so much out there now. There's, a lot of great coaches. There's, YouTube, there's all of these podcasts, what we're doing here. I mean, I listen to dozens of podcasts, and that's really what got me into it is that, this podcasting thing is great. You can listen to it, learn things, when you're driving to jobs or whatever, as we know. And the information's out there, but, why reinvent the wheel? There's so many of us that have been there before, and we're willing to share our knowledge and help people, as you talked about, in your church, the mentoring program, somebody that can help you do it, because we're out in the wilderness by ourselves running this business. and we just don't feel confident, have the confidence that we know what we're doing. And by, something I recommend doing, one is being sure that you're networking out to other contractors, and why not share the information and help each other with non-competing contractors, peer groups. I put together groups where from around the country, and we talk about, what's working, what's not working in your business, and just ways to improve. And this is where what I've done and seen some great results. And it all starts off with a business plan, really just taking a look at where you're going, and as you say, how do you exit this business? Well, that's something that you start off day one, is thinking about that, because it's going to come, and it takes a lot of time to do that, to build these systems and processes that we're talking about. And that's what I do. And I think I've really helped contractors, gotten to know have some great friendships, really enjoy it. So that's what I do.
Well, it's great. And you and I hopped on a consulting call, and I wanted to learn more about your services. And the neat thing about our call is, well, you're just like you are now, very easy to talk with, but also you've got a great track record. And I love what you said about climbing a mountain. I mean, none of us would go on an unguided trip to try to climb Everest or some huge mountain. I mean, it would just be death, right? But in business, like you said, a lot of people are just bootstrapping it. But what I liked about our call is you have that experience. You've been successful, but even on our call, you were really good about asking some questions that I'm voicing ideas. I've got lots of ideas, but you're like, well, now wait a second. If this is your focus and you're going to do these two other things, are you going to be able to do all of that? Or how are you going to do all that? Or, what's going to happen to your time? And you asked really good questions on that call. So I highly recommend anybody. And so if anybody wants to get in touch with you and visit your website, what's the URL they need to look at?
Just go to the roofershow.com. And if you want to chat what we've, as we did, there, go to my contact page, just a big button. It says schedule a half-hour free call, and just kind of see what's going on, see if I can help you. If I can, great. If I can't, that's fine too. Keep in touch. And, I'm always willing to help. Something that works great that I really enjoy is I'm a big texter, believe in texting. And because you call somebody and leave a message, you're not going to get a return call. You send an email, it's just lost in the big stack. But when you text somebody, generally you're going to get a response. And I've got, oh, geez, I mean, a lot of these texts coming in, and I just want to know what everybody's doing. How's business going? Just text me and say hi. And you can text me at 510-612-1450. And I'd love to hear from you, just say hi. And I always like feedback. I want to get feedback from my show. What do you like? What do you don't like? What kind of guests would you like to hear from? How can I, and I'm there to help. And by texting, it's just real quick, it's easy. And that's why I always say, stop what you're doing right now. Send me a text, just say hi, and keep it simple, and boom. And that's been really working out. And, I'm helping ask me a question. I'll be glad to help you out. I'll shoot you a text back and we'll have a conversation.
Well, Dave, we appreciate how accessible you've made yourself, and we appreciate I love your podcast and the coaching that you offer. And so thanks again for being accessible. Thanks for being on our show, on the Roofing Mastery podcast. And seriously, I'd really like to reconvene in the future and talk about how to set up a business for exit, because there's not too many podcast episodes on that, and you've done that too. So maybe that's another line of business you could have. But anyway, we just thank Miller. Any closing comments before we end this one?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for what you do, man. Thanks for your voice. As I've been, watching you, it's like, why does Dave do what he does? And I think it's just this genuineness that you have, and just say thank you, from a younger businessman to an older businessman. Thank you for what you do, for the seat that you're sitting in right now, and for all the people that you're helping out. You're really a needed voice out there, and I just wanted to make sure that you know that you're appreciated.
Hey, thanks so much. And what you guys are doing, I mean, here you are. There's so much room for, to share your knowledge. And I look forward to subscribing to your show and catching all of your podcasts. And, we're all there to learn, and we can learn from each other and create friendships and networking opportunities. I mean, it's great to chat with you guys, man. This has been awesome.
Yeah. Well, call us if you come to Dallas. We'll buy you a steak dinner.
There you go. And likewise, if you ever get out to California.
All right. We'll do it, man.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
Hey, thank you. Good to talk to you guys.